Okay, what the hell? What the hell? What the hell? So, is Hereditary the modern day horror masterpiece that everyone is claiming it to be? Stick around and hear my thoughts on the film coming up. What is up, everyone, and welcome to Men vs. Movies. I'm Griffin, as always, and hey, listen, if you guys are new to the channel, consider hitting that subscribe button for more movie and television-related content on a weekly basis. So Hereditary is written and directed by Ari Aster in his feature film debut, and it's starring Toni Collette, Alex Wolff, Gabriel Byrne, and Millie Shapiro. After the passing of the Graham family matriarch, her daughter's family begins to uncover the cryptic and terrifying secrets that surround their ancestry. And if you guys haven't been able to tell, my voice is a little shot. The Washington Capitals just won the Stanley Cup, and I'm from the Washington, D.C. area, and I'm a huge fan, so if I sound a little rough, that is why. I was screaming my lungs out a couple days ago. Let's get this out of the way first. I am not the biggest horror fan. It's not that I have anything against the genre. There are just plenty of other genres that I would rather watch. But when a good horror film comes around and it really makes an impact, I tend to like them a lot. And so when I heard the buzz surrounding Hereditary, I was like, wow, do we have another, like, The Witch on our hands? Because that was a horror film that I really dug, got under my skin, bugged me for days. And so after walking out of Hereditary, this is this year's The Witch. This movie is very unsettling, incredibly disturbing, probably one of the most disturbing films I've ever seen, right up there with The Witch. And throughout the entirety of its runtime, which I have to say is a pretty lofty runtime of a little over 2 hours, and it has you on edge for damn near all of that runtime, Ari Aster proves himself not only an incredible horror filmmaker, but just a filmmaker in general. The way he moves the camera is gorgeous. They have a lot of long, slow takes. The cinematography is almost reminiscent of shooting something inside of a dollhouse, which is kind of weird because it ties into what the mother does during her spare time. She builds these fake model dollhouses. And so that was a nice way to tie that in. And then also the way that they had these long one-shots, or at least they had a lot of takes that were made to look like one-shots by the way they move the camera, by the way they transitioned the camera from below ground to above ground to different rooms in the house. They utilized the space in the set of the house that this movie takes place in to its fullest. And it's one of the reasons why you as an audience member are in suspense for the whole time, because of their clever use of the camera and lighting and all of these other external technical elements that go into making this film truly unsettling. And so I have to commend Aster and his cinematographer for crafting unbelievable shots. And while we're still on the topic of Ari Aster, let's just keep praising the man because this story is genius. What I love about it is that it's essentially a family drama set inside of a psychological horror film's body. At its core, it really is a film about this family unraveling due to the tragedies going on around them. And all of the actors play into that beautifully, which I'll get into in a second. But when you start adding in the external horror elements, it heightens the stakes and it adds to the drama that is going on. And that's why I think that this movie is not only a great horror film, but it's just a great film because it has the dynamic of this mother and son butting heads at its core. There's one scene in particular that takes place during dinner that is one of the most tense moments of the film and has nothing to do with any of the horror or thrilling aspects of the movie. It's just the character conflict that gives it that much suspense. And while I bring up the horror elements, when those elements come to play, they are so disturbing. Now, I'm not going to go out here and say that this is by far the scariest film I've ever seen. I don't think it's necessarily scary. It's more so unsettling and disturbing and gets under your skin, like I mentioned at the beginning. There are several shots and images in this movie that I think will forever be burned into my brain. They are just that grotesque and oh my god, if you've seen the movie you know what I'm talking about. But and much like with The Witch, this is a film that sticks with you way past the end of the credits. I mean, I had trouble going to sleep last night because I kept thinking about the stuff that was going on in this film and the really disturbing and haunting ending. Now, I will say I do have some negatives regarding the ending. I actually find the last 10 minutes or so of this film to be my least favorite part. I think the movie teeters a little bit and ultimately comes undone. It just doesn't feel like it meshes with the psychological thriller elements that they were setting up throughout the entirety of the movie. Because ultimately, to me, this movie felt a lot like The Shining, where we were following the main character played by Toni Collette, and we're not sure whether or not she's going crazy, much like a Jack Torrance character. And so that adds a level of suspense. But aside from that, outside of the ending, I thought the entirety of the movie was pretty well grounded. Like, a lot of the stuff that was happening, you could see happening in real life. And so when they tack on this ending, it doesn't quite work for me, and I think some of the logic that they throw in there's little details that don't quite make sense to me. And ultimately, the movie takes a turn into the supernatural, which if they had sprinkled some of the supernatural throughout the entirety of the movie, I think the ending would have worked a little bit better, but unfortunately they don't, and so I think the ending kind of falls apart for me. That being said, the ending on its own is an incredibly disturbing and haunting piece of cinema. Let's talk about the performances here. These performances in this film are some of the best of the year. Toni Collette, yeah, you've been hearing a lot about her. You've been hearing the term Oscar buzz surrounding her performance being thrown around, and rightfully so. She knocks it out of the park. She gives a tour de force performance, probably the best performance of her career, and by far the best performance of the year. There's so many layers to her character's personality, and you don't know whether or not she's actually crazy or whether some of this stuff is truly going on. And as we dive deeper down the rabbit hole in the film, finding out more about her family and her ancestry and her relationship with her mother and her kids, it adds more and more layers to her character, and you see each of those layers come through in Colette's performance. She is unbelievable. There are several scenes where if she were to be nominated, that would 100% be played during the Academy Awards ceremonies for her Oscar clip. And while Toni Collette is getting the majority of the praise surrounding Hereditary, I want to take a moment here and talk about Alex Wolff. Now, this is a kid who has burst onto the scene a couple of years ago, and in every single film he's been in, he's continued to improve his acting game, and this one I happen to think is his best performance to date. He really holds his own against Toni Collette, and seeing their conflict and their relationship as a mother and son is the core of this film. And while I'm not going to go into spoilers, there is a pretty traumatic event that happens in this movie that causes Alex Wolff's character to spiral into PTSD, and seeing him cope with that and seeing him portray that is so visceral and so authentic and so real. And there's one sequence in this movie where it's just focused on him and his reactions after this event takes place. It's unbelievable. Alex Wolff seriously needs to be commended just as much so as Toni Collette. The two of them make this film work. Now, I've already mentioned my issues regarding the ending and some of the supernatural elements of the film not being used enough. I do have one last issue I want to touch on, and that's simply the fact that I think the film has a tendency to over-explain things sometimes. And while I understand its purpose and I think that it helps make certain elements clear, like I said, there are some minor details that don't quite make sense, and ultimately you're just left with this monologue of explanation and expository dialogue that feels just like that, expository dialogue. And I could have done with a better use of explanation in the movie. But that is a very, very tiny nitpick. Because overall, I think Hereditary is one of the best horror thriller films I've seen in the past several years. It's right up there with The Witch. It is a one and done for me. I will never watch this movie again because it just left me so unsettled. It's a film that's going to stick with you far after the credits have been rolling. You'll probably not be able to sleep for the next night, much like myself. While I do have issues regarding the tail end of the movie, I don't think that takes away from anything Ari Aster did throughout the entirety of the movie. It's an experience that has you on the edge of your seat. It's got tour de force performances from Toni Collette and Alex Wolff, and I seriously cannot recommend it enough. And for all those reasons and the reasons I've mentioned throughout my review, I'm ultimately going to be giving Hereditary Armored Up. Seriously, go check this film out, but probably go see it during the day, and definitely go see it with a crowd, and don't go alone. I did none of those things, and it made for a slightly traumatic experience. Ugh. Thanks, guys, for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this review of Hereditary. If you've seen the film, be sure to let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments section below. I'd love to hear whether or not this film got to you like it did me. As always, guys, if you like this video, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more movie reviews, television-related content, and podcasts galore. You can also like Men vs. Movies on Facebook and follow us on Twitter simply by searching Men vs. Movies. And lastly, guys, if you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can always give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right, that'll do it for this review. Until next time, guys, take care.